Okay, so today we're going to be playing a couple tables of 100 no limit and possibly 50 no limit on global poker. Okay, so starting off the action, get queen 8 off in the small blind. Okay, and then flop a belly buster, right? So I don't think it's really good to lead out here, just because both of my opponents, they hit their range pretty hard with the jack 10, no, with the ace, right? So I mean, I'd be more inclined to lead out if I flop the belly buster on a lower board, right, on the flop. Okay, so let's see if we could join a couple more tables. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so I'm going to join this table because KFax13 is somebody who I have tagged as a really weak player. Okay, so the better players I have marked on red, right? So have a decent amount of history with WK608. So I think he predominantly plays 100 no limit, and maybe once in a while he'll jump in at 1-2 at 200 no limit. Okay, so maybe we could get into another table, right? Just so that we have, you know. Okay, so I'm gonna join this one. So I mean, I think this table is gonna be short-handed, but we'll see what happens. Okay, so 3-6 max tables. Okay, so a little bit about the notes that I'm using. The green kind of means a weak player who tends to be kind of tight. So they'll actually make laydowns, and they'll just wait to have it. So they're actually big nits, but they're also a fish, right? And the gold means somebody who we really want to play with, right? So the guys that who just pay off a lot of money with not much, right? And I don't really have notes on any other players. I'm pretty sure I've played with a couple of them at least. But we'll have to go with our instincts for the time being. Okay, so like typically from under the gun, I would be opening suited aces, any pairs. Um, so I think in tougher games, sometimes they say don't play low pairs, but I think on global poker, you could pretty much play any pair in a six max or full ring, right? So at the tougher games, maybe it's not a good idea to, I mean, play play like deuces under the gun, right? But on global, I think there's a lot of value in playing a lot more hands. Okay, so we have 10-8 suited in the big blind here. A pretty standard defend if it comes to us with the raise. So it's a hand that plays pretty well post flop. So definitely want to be defending with this hand, especially multi-way, right? Okay, so we're gonna defend ace nine off the right table, and obviously miss the flop. So I think this is a pretty easy check fold. Understanding that we didn't really hit anything on the board, right? I mean, we might be ahead some of the time, but I kind of want like a club if I'm gonna make this peel. Okay, so we're gonna defend here with queen nine suited, getting good price on a call. King 5 on the flop, so pretty easy check fold here as well. And we flop a flush draw on this top left table. Oh, excuse me. So I mean, we're probably gonna go with the check call, right? And then we turn a 10, right? So I think this is a good spot where we could check again, because I think the showdown value that we have is more important, right? Than trying to bet at it, right? Because I mean, there's not much means of protection, right, on this board. Okay, so here we raise from the small blind, right? So the button limps. Oh, I usually see bet there, but I'm not sure what happened, right? Okay, so let me see. Yeah, so I mean that's a spot where I think you could check some of the time. but you want to be c-betting more times than not, like about half size of the pot. Yeah, so I mean that was definitely a misclick there. So here I'm just hoping that I win the showdown, but I don't, right? So he has ace rag, right? That bet turn for value. Okay, so on to the next hand. So would have flopped the nut straight here, right? So I mean, it would be great if we could know that in advance. So here, against a stronger player opens from the under the gun, like I'd be inclined to do a 3-bet. But because this guy is so bad, I think I'm going to go for a call and see a flop, right? So I mean, it's not ideal to play out of position, but understanding that he's a very weak player who we could get value from post flop, I think we could smooth call here. Yeah, and then get 3-bet, right? So I think if he calls, we have odds to see the flop. Oh, okay, and then get 4-bet, so he could just fold and get out of the way. Yeah, so normally I just mix that in as the 3-bet to balance the times when I'm 3-betting with a really strong hand, right? So I think that much is obvious. So here I'm going to check the bottom pair. Yeah, because I mean, I think this is a board that's well coordinated for most people's range. And because I have showdown value with sevens, right? So I think like most of the hands that are calling me there, if I continue on the flop, are the hands that have me beat. Okay, so I'm gonna let go of a7 there. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, because he was actually the guy that was most likely to have anything, right? And I think with the guy behind, we need to fold the bottom pair, right? So ace5 suited, I'm definitely gonna open an under the gun. Okay, and then we get raised here by WK608. So I think he's a bit more tighter than most players. When they open here, he's not going to have as many, ragged hands, right, as opens. But we're still going to defend, right? Ace5 suited is a very good hand. And flop 2 pair. Okay, so here I think I'm going to continue for half the pot. If he has like a low pair, he might be folding. But here I think we could go both ways, I think, but I think I'm going to try to go for value right away, right? Just because, this guy is just, in case he has an ace, right? Yeah, and then he doesn't, so he folds, and we take it down. Yeah, because we're trying to get in stacks, right, by the later streets, right? So I think we could do that there. Okay, here we're going to continue for half the pot, and then get a fold, so that's fine. Yeah, so I kind of want to make sure against guys like WK608 that I have some bluffs in that range as well when I raise the flop, right? So we might be considering like an open ender, right, or something like that. So I think with the implied odds here, I could take a turn, right? So I don't think WK is raising here too often unless he has a set or 2 pair. Okay, so we take 1 off, even though it's a pot size bet. So I think it's a situation where we could win more money if we hit the flush, obviously. But the board pairs on the turn, so I think we're just going to fold. Okay, because the flush draw is not as valuable anymore, and with the 10 high flush draw, we don't even know if we're drawing to the nuts, right? I mean, usually a flush draw would be good, and in 6 max, you can't really let go of too many flush draws, right? Okay, so here we're going to ISO with 10-9 suited. No, play a pot in position, right, against seemingly weak player, right? So he limped under the gun and just flatted. So flop 2 pair. So I think this is a board where we need to be betting right away. So I think I'm going to balance this as a half pot, a half the pot size bet, right? So I think it's either way ahead or way behind situation, right? So I think here, I don't think I could give a free card, right? So I mean, I think we're beat here often. But we obviously have hands that we're still getting value from. Oh, and then fill up on the river, right? How interesting, right? So I think the sizing that I really want to use here. So I don't know how big we could go here, right? So I mean, we've been repping the flush the whole time, right? So I think this is a spot where we could get paid with the queen, right? So we're gonna try to go for full pot here, right? Okay, and then get called, and that's very nice, right? So I mean, yeah, I think that's a spot where we could go for pretty big. Like, I mean, I was considering even jamming there, but I think given the size of the pot, that would be too much of an overbet. And very happy to get paid a full pot there, right? Again, I think I can add a note that he is a weak player, right? Okay, so here we're going to defend with 10-8 off. Kind of don't like defending against the full pot size open because the pot sizes get bigger on the flop. Yeah, and the flop a 2-pair, right? So we want to lead out this turn, right, for value. He doesn't have a jack there too often, right? Yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't be defending too much lower than 10-8 offsuit there, right? Because we do want like a decent possibility of being able to make good hands, post flop, right? Okay, so here where you could just let go of Jack 10 off, right? Yeah, I mean that was just a very a serene river for us, right? Wasn't it? It's usually the ace of hearts or king of hearts. Okay, here I don't think I'm gonna open 8-4 suited. I think that's just too trash of a hand. If it folded to me, of course. I'd be more inclined to open with hands like 8-6 suited and higher for this classification of hands. Like 8-7 suited, I'd be opening from any position, right? So that's just a hand that plays really well post flop, right? So here I'm going to continue for half of the pot. So I mean, this is a pretty good flop for us. I mean, not that good, of course. I mean, I don't know if I want to float here, actually, right? Because I think this is a spot where he's c betting the turn, right, 100% of the time, and we're not drawing to a very we don't have very strong draws, right? So basically, we even if we hit our draw, right, with I mean, like I'd be happy to hit the straight. I think, right? But I mean, with the flush, right? It's 9-high flush draw is not something that we want to have, right? Um, I'd almost like hate seeing the flush come off, right? Because then I know that like I almost always have to take another one off, right? Okay, so here I'm gonna ISO with ace-8 off. So my standard range here for isolating like might be like ace-7 off and higher. Okay, and then get 3-bet by the button, and this is a huge 3-bet, so I'm just gonna fold, right? So I mean, if some reg, let's say this guy was like a really strong reg, and like he realizes that you are isolating this fish that you have position on frequently, right? And he's gonna 3-bet frequently too, right? And that's one thing that you want to consider, right? And you want to like adjust your range slowly, right, based on what you believe about him, right? So I'm going to continue with ace queen off here. So I think we could continue the story that we have it when we bet against him, right? Because he's going to be intimidated by us, right? So I'm going to be continuing there close to 100% of the time, right, as a c bet. Okay, so I'm going to check fours on this flop, right? Okay, and then he checks behind. So I don't think he has a queen or a 9. So I mean, I think I'm going to take a stab at this on the turn. Right, and then get one of the better river cards for us, right? And it ended up that we ended up getting max value, right? Because he, yeah. I mean, he had I guess 2 overs and a gut shot, right? So I mean, I think my read on him so far is that he's a pretty tight player. Somebody that we could definitely bully around if he wanted to. Okay, but he has been opening for the full pot size, right? So I mean, I think that's one thing to take note, right? But it seems like post flop he's not betting too much with unless he has like a piece of the board, right? So I mean, I'm assuming that's the case here. I don't think he's going to be bluffing, and in either case, 10-8 suited is it didn't really hit any of the board, right? So I don't think I could continue there. Yeah, so I mean, so I think not too many strong players that I noticed. I think this can't be beat 34 might be a rake because he's at all three of our tables. I mean, very good tables, right? Obviously, it's Saturday night when I'm recording this. Yeah, so I mean, normally the games would not be as good as this, right? So, I mean, either that or there might be like more rakes and good players than I know from playing more 1-2. So I think I did play this can't be beat guy, right? Yeah, and I think he is definitely one of the better players at these limits. Okay, ace five off. I'm not gonna open here. So here I think I'm gonna open a little tighter because the global glitch or whatever it is, right? Where if the player leaves, right, it just doesn't post the small blind, only the big blind, right? So I mean, I guess that kind of makes sense from certain perspective too, right? But like if you play live poker, it would just be two big blinds, right? Or a small on the button in some cases. So here I'm gonna open with 7-5 suited. I prefer to open with 7-5 suited as opposed to like ace deuce off, right? Because I mean I prefer yeah, being able to hit hands, right? An ace deuce off is just not a hand that plays very well post flop, right? So here is three ways to the flop. I think I'm just gonna give up here, right? Because with the Jack 10-3 with the heart tone, right? It just hits a lot of their range, right? So I mean I don't think I'm gonna bluff at this on the turn. I think that's too aggro, right? Yeah, so yeah, we're just gonna let it go here. Get too fancy. Like I have a theory that like when people bet like even if it's just a single dollar, they're more likely to call you. Okay, so we're gonna try calling with the pocket fours here. We haven't seen this guy before, but I assume we could set mine with 95 big blinds to start the hand. Okay, and then we open ace 10 off under the gun. Okay, I'm gonna continue here for half the pot because I think if he doesn't have diamonds or yeah, then he's just gonna fold, right? Okay, and then he calls, so maybe he has a diamond or he could have a set, right? So I think I'm just gonna check and probably check fold. So here I think I'm just gonna call and see the turn, right? Because if I raise, then I think I'm getting action from. I mean, I don't really necessarily want action from flushes. So I mean, he might have an overpair, right? And ooh, we do fill up on the river, right? So we're hoping that he has the ace of hearts, right? And he was slow playing or something. So I mean, this spot's kind of like, please have the ace of hearts, right? So I mean, he does. I mean, I don't think we could shove, but we could definitely go for something pretty big here. I think, right? So I mean, I might be being a little greedy. I feel like, but we'll see what happens, right? So I mean, we want him to believe that we don't have it's kind of like we're bluffing because we know that we know he doesn't like he probably doesn't have the ace of hearts, right? And so if he does have the ace of hearts, then he could level himself into calling, right? So I mean I just don't know if he's capable of folding like an ace of hearts, right? So I mean I'm guessing it's like a lower heart, right? So on the paired board turn with this guy behind, I think we're gonna fold to a pot size bet. Yeah, so I mean that was a pretty as good of a run out as you could expect for fours. So we're gonna ISO here with king 9 off. I mean, this would be at the very bottom of my isolation range. I mean, I'd also ISO with like maybe king 8 suited and king 7 suited as well, right? Or king 6 suited. Like, I mean, I don't like, I prefer isolating with suited kings, right? Okay, so let's see. We flop top pair. So I think here we could go like around half pot. So I mean, these are against weaker players, right? So we are getting value from, I think, worse hands. We take a flop with ace 4 suited here. So here, I think I'm gonna fold, right? I don't know him too well, right? So against some regs who are doing this frequently, I would be inclined to take one off, right? Yeah, you kind of want to gauge how likely they are to be, continue on the turn, right? So if we had a HUD, that information would be visible to us readily, right? But since global doesn't allow them, right? I actually prefer it that way, that everybody doesn't have information. Okay, so we're gonna open this against WK608. So I think I'm a better player than him. And in either case, I think you have to open this against anybody. And we're gonna continue for half the pot, right? So I mean, I think if he had like, Jack 10, Queen 10, like 2 overcard scenarios, right? We get a lot of them to fold, right? Okay, so we flop a flush draw on this table, right? So here, I think it's a situation where you could go with either a raise or a call. So we're gonna go for a raise, actually. We're gonna pick something small, right? To see if we have fold equity first of all, right? Maybe we don't. So here, so I don't know what he is betting like $1 with, right? But I mean, we might as well just take the free card, right? Because I mean, I think on that turn, right, he's kind of like not likely less likely to fold if he has like an 8, right? I think because the paired board mentality, right? And on the other hand, if he has like a straight draw, we have showdown value against it, right? So I mean, it looks like he did have the king, and we were probably not getting him to fold, right? Right, but I mean, he could have had any of those hands, right? So I mean, I think 7-6 is a hand that he could, perceivably, donk out with, right? Because he's open-ended, right? Or a flush draw, right? That's, I mean, not as likely because we have the flush draw, right? But I think with the flushes, even if we block the flush, it is more likely than for other types of hands, right? Like a pair, obviously. So blocking a flush is not like, I think as intense as blocking a straight, right, or a pair, right? So I think that's one thing to consider when you assign ranges to see if you're gonna call or whatever you're doing, right? In all of your poker decisions. Okay, so he limps from the button. So I think I'm gonna make a note that he's a weak player, right? And with can't be beat 34, he's a stronger player. So I think here it's okay to lead out sometimes. But I don't know if we have that image, right? So if you have a really tight image, we could consider, and and if we know this fish's tendency better, right? Then then we would consider sometimes taking a stab at it, right? I mean, because I mean the main reason is because that's a board that's likely to have missed both players, right? But you never want to do that without a purpose, right? So you want to consider like how's that that needs to be like building your image, right, in some way, right? Okay, so let's see. We turn the flush draw, right? So I mean, I don't think I'm gonna rep the 5 here, right? So I mean, he could be checking back the ace, right? So I've seen people do that a lot at these limits. Okay, so king 7-7 on the flop. We're just gonna continue here. I don't think we're getting raised too often, right, from this guy. So he calls. So he could be doing that with the king. He could have a flush draw. He could have a lower pair. Just for $1, I think we have to call. So he checks back. So he probably doesn't have a king. That's what I'm thinking, right? But he could have gotten there with the queen, right? Oh, okay. So he had the lower pair, right? So I don't really want to go for value, right, when the queen rolls off on the river. It's kind of weird, like these guys are folding for like $1. But with the dollar, we kind of have the pot odds, like immediate pot odds almost to hit our set on the turn, right? So I mean, I think that's the spot that where we have to call, right? So we got to see a card for $1, right? So that's what we can, that's value, right? So okay, so we have a min open here. So I'm gonna 3-bet here in position, right, to balance my range. And because I think a lot of people at these limits are just folding a lot of the time, right? When I open like this, right? Okay, so he calls and we take a flop, right? Okay, so I have I have a gut shot, right? So I mean, I think I'm gonna c-bet here, right? So fold out a lot of hands that are weaker than ours, right? Definitely, and here as well, right? Okay, so here, I mean, I think I'm just gonna give up, although I turn double gutted, right? Um, so I don't think this is a spot where I don't think he's even calling the flop with like a queen, right? So he probably has the ace. Oh, we do get there on the river, right? So what a beautiful card, right? Unless he did that with the king 10, right? Okay, so here we're just gonna let go of our a7 off, right? Okay, and then here we kind of want to bet a pretty large sizing, right? Against, I mean, we want to get paid by the ace though, right? So maybe let's go for something like 34. I mean, I don't know if that gets paid by an ace. Like, it depends on how strong of a player he is, obviously, right? But I mean, I think that's a reasonable sizing to go for. We don't want to like. I mean, I was considering over betting, of course, right? Because we want to consider over betting, right? Whenever we have nuts or close, virtual nuts, right? But I think that's a spot where he's not likely to have more than like just the ace, right? So I mean, like if the board's just not connected enough, right? Yeah, I mean, so that's the thought process, right? So if the board was a lot more coordinated and connected and you had the nuts, then I would like going for the overbet a lot more. Okay, so open with queen 10 suited, pretty standard. So I think I'm gonna actually bet out here for half the pot with our mid pair. Yeah, so it looks like he left us a message. Oh no, I mean it's from somebody else. Okay, so ooh, okay, so we get 3-bet by the big blind, right? So one thing about this spot, like, I mean, obviously we're folding, right? Because it's to a 6x 3-bet. But like, I think a lot of the higher limit pros. Oh shit. Okay, so yeah, I mean, okay. Anyway, a lot of higher limit pros actually advocate mixing in hands like ace 5 suited into a 3-bet from the big blind. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention, right? So when he 3-bets there, obviously it seems like he has my range crushed, right? So, I mean, he can't have too much on this run out, right? Because I mean, I have everything, right? I would have had everything. Um, but he jams on the river, so I'm wondering what he had. Like, I mean, yeah, I mean, okay. So anyway, yeah, so that would have been a spot where I could have possibly just coolered him, right? So if he was doing that with like, so I mean, there's a good chance he had a flush right on that river, or like a lower boat. I mean, probably not lower boat though, right? He's not doing that with like mid pair, right? I mean, only hand he might be doing that with like pocket tens, but then I block pocket tens, right? So there's exactly one combo of pocket tens he could have, right? So I mean, it's more likely to be like ace king of clubs, right, with the flush. I mean, he was kind of short though, right? So that's a spot where I considering even jamming like just a lone 10, right, for value, right? Just because I think when there's that much in the pot, right? So I think players feel like a lot more married, right, to their pair, right, when the board's like draw heavy and like it seems like something missed. Okay, so here I'm not gonna do anything with the Jack 10 off, right? Okay, so we get raised pot here, fives in the big blind, so we're gonna take a flop and hope that we flop a set, but we don't, obviously, right? So, all right, let me see. But we are probably gonna call one street. Okay, so a lot of hands that we're still beating that he opens with. Not so much anymore, right? So we'll see what he does on the turn. Okay, so he checks over to us, right? So we're just gonna check it back. We have a lot of showdown value, right? So we're still beating like ace king, right? So I don't think he's turning that into a bluff, right? So happy to show it down. Okay, and then he did have a mid pair or top pair on the flop rather. Okay, so we have a pair here. I mean, I guess I could have bet on the turn, right? Against more passive players, right? We're just gonna fold here, right? So I mean, he's overbetting into a dry pot, right? So I mean, I don't think he's doing that often as a bluff. Okay, so we get ace queen suited on the button, and looks like Iowa thrift. This fish has posted on the cutoff, right? So maybe like a really quick bathroom break, and then he couldn't wait to play or something, right? So obviously we're gonna open here. Can take down a decent amount of blinds, right? Okay, so I mean, I think so. William Tacoma, Washington. Like, I mean, what kind of a screen name is that, right? I mean, I know it's like 20, 30-minute drive from here. So I mean, he probably lives nearby, right? So he should be paying us like $200 an hour for lessons, right? Instead of probably losing like boatloads of money on global poker. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so if it gets back to us, I think most likely we have to defend with a6 off and 6 max. So that's one of the reasons why yeah, 6 max is a lot more variance, right? Okay, so we have to play more hands. Okay, no, we don't hit anything on this flop, right? So it is pretty dry. But I think I'm gonna go for a check fold. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, this is one hand that I don't really like to play in the small blind if it's a blind on blind. I would complete to see a flop if there's some limpers. The reason being is like I don't think there's really a lot of value or like connectivity in this hand, right? So I mean, I think it's okay to let go of that a decent amount of the time, right? So here I would defend with maybe like king five off and higher. Like I don't want to be defending too much of the time with just king rags, right? Like offsuit. So maybe like king five off or king six off and higher would be a good suggested range, right? For defending against the button open. Yeah, so when he overcalls here, I think a good hand to overcall within the small blind. I'd consider like suited aces, obviously pairs, and maybe if they're bad enough, obviously you could start to add in more hands gradually, right? Okay, so we have Matt Low 2, who's set with $54.99. Right, so I'm gonna assume he's not gonna be very good, right? Yeah, so this WK608 guy and probably this can't be beat guy too. Like they'll sit for like 24/7. They'll sit 24/7. Yeah, just playing hand after hand, right? So I don't know how they do that. And they'll always wait till they have it too, right? So it's just like very mechanical, in my opinion. So we're not gonna lead out with bottom pair. I mean, so I think one question to ask is, do you have showdown value, right? We do with pair of fives. I mean, not so much anymore, actually, right? But and also, are we getting better hands to fold, right? So that those are the two top questions you have to ask yourself before you bet, right? Okay, so we're not going to open with Jack 7 off on the cutoff. If it was Jack 10, no, Jack 7 suited, right, I'd consider opening against easier lineups, right? Um, uh, so, I mean, I don't mind seeing a flop against a weaker player, right, who's very call heavy. With Jack 7 suited, right? But I'm not gonna want to see do that. I'm not gonna want to open it like into like two or three regulars to act behind me, right? Because they'll three bet a lot more often, and they'll know how to play a lot better post flop, right? And they're gonna show up with just stronger ranges in general, right? So here we're gonna try to value bet two streets. So I think here it's a spot where we could go kind of like medium large. I think we're trying to get like a jack or lower pair to call, right? But whoa, he was very nutted here. So I don't know why. I think he could have won a lot more money off of me potentially, right? Depending on how he played it. So I mean, he had ace king with the ace redraw, right? So I mean, a very weak player for sure, right? So I don't even know how much he got off of that hand. Yeah, I mean, he made like a whole like $8, right? Off of top pair with the nut redraw, right? Okay, so we're gonna take a flop against these two donks from the big blind with 7-5 off. Obviously missed completely, so we have to let it go. Yeah, so guys like him, so they'll never do any of the betting themselves. Like I'm not sure why that is. So you'd have to ask them, right? But they do tend to, yeah. I mean, they just wait for other people to bet, right? So I mean, one time I talked to this, guy in his like probably 50s at the casino, and like he proudly said, "I never raise," right? So I mean, yeah, that was kind of all right. So we're gonna continue here for half the pot. So I mean, he can't have like ace king, with the flush draw every time, right? So I mean, he's got to miss at some point, right? So we keep firing and hope for the best. But we get called on the flop, and he could have a pair, he could have a draw, right? Ooh, and then we river the nuts, right? So we're hoping that he bets out here with. He does. It seems like he doesn't have a huge part of the board, right? But nevertheless, we do want to go for some decent amount of value, right? Also, open him the room to shove, obviously, but he's probably not going to shove, right? But we're just hoping to get called on this bet, right? We don't. So maybe he had lower hearts or something like that. So 8-7 off, like I'd be inclined to open it from the cutoff, obviously against weaker lineups. Not from the hijack though, right? I think that's too wide. So I like opening a lot of hands from the cutoff and the button, right? Probably more so than most people. I mean, obviously, I look at who's in the lineup, right, to act after me. Yeah, so I mean, a pretty good session overall, right? So I mean, I think we're up, like not a lot, but like a decent amount for three tabling, right? So up maybe a stack or so. So I mean, I think the games were a lot better when we started. That's usually the case, right? Because the rigs will sit there forever, right? Whereas the fish are going to leave, right? So I mean, obviously, a very good idea to constantly look for better tables. So that should definitely be something that you do while you play your sessions. So I mean, I can't say that I do that with the high enough frequency, right? So here, I think I'm just going to fold King Jack off on the button, right, to his min raise. So I mean, that's a spot that could go either way, right? So if you, I think all three options are fine based on what your plan is, right, after the flop.
Espera, está marcada mi mamá, la voy a contestar muy rápido, espera. ¿Qué pasó, ma? ¿No?
Okay, so we're gonna try to play like another orbit or two, right, and call it a session. Okay, so Jack gate off and the cutoff. I would have opened that if it folded over to me. It didn't. Yeah, we're gonna sit out on this table actually because I think it's like there's two decent rakes for this limit. Yeah, and the fish kind of lost all of their chips, right? So okay, so here yeah, this is really slow when you have only two tables going, right? Okay, so I mean, I think we're gonna call it a session when it comes back to us. Yes, I mean, I think that was a pretty good session overall. Hopefully, I was able to clarify some of the spots that people had questions about. Okay, and then we're gonna play our last hand, right? Okay, so and then call it a day. Okay, and it's ace 10 off, so I'm gonna open and sit out next hand. So here, like ace 10 off is kind of trash, like because we're under the gun. If we get 3-bet, like we would be inclined to fold, right? Being out of position. Like with ace 10 suited, I think it's fine taking a flop sometimes. Again, he's disconnected, so we probably have to freaking wait. Yeah, to pick up our 150, right? But hopefully he comes back and we could play a pot. Yeah, so I mean, I don't even know how long the time bank is. It might be for the full minute, I mean, which is kind of because I don't think they had this time bank before. Yeah, so it looks like he's just gonna fold, and we're gonna win 150 to end the session, right? Okay, so yeah, thanks for watching this video, and until next time.